Well, that's quite a pleasant evening sky, I must admit, and you're looking down the access track to access this Misson Carr reserve, which is where I am again this evening. It's another moth trapping session. Seems longer than a fortnight since I last came here, but it was August the 4th, and it's the 16th of August now. It seemed longer since I was last here. But hopefully we'll get a few interesting species, some new species for the year that I can show you, and maybe a couple of surprises along the way. In the meantime, while I get set up, you can ogle the view. It's not bad, is it? It's a nice sky, that is. Well, we're up and running. It's just coming up to 2100 hours. How the nights are indeed drawing in. Nice temperatures. I don't think it's going down much lower than about 15, 16, something like that. At least while the time I'll be here. And I'll certainly be giving it about 4 hours. It just depends on how it goes. And we'll see what comes in. No rain forecast. No rain forecast for the next few days. We're actually into a dry spell, which is very unusual and different in 2023. So we await the first moths. There's a few mosquitoes again, if you want one of them. I didn't think you would somehow. Well, the first moth is in, and it's a green carpet. Probably the first of quite a number of green carpets during the course of this evening, but just as a reminder to people, the setup I use, the power is initially supplied by a portable generator. That powers the light that you can see in front of you, and that is a 125 watt mercury vapor bulb mounted in a porcelain lamp holder. You can't have plastic, otherwise it'll just melt, because MV bulbs run extremely hot, so never touch them. The bulb is covered by the glass part of a cafetiere, and that protects it against any rain if you ever get any when you're trapping. Inside the box is the choke or ballast, and that's very important. You do need a choke or a ballast if you're using an MV bulb, because that regulates the amount of electricity going to that bulb when you plug it in. The rest is just a white sheet, and you may notice a big difference because I've washed it. And no, that isn't Daz whiteness, for those that can remember the old adverts. And then the rest is just very simple equipment. I have a holding cage which is bought for about £15 off eBay. There's a number of plastic containers to put your moths into that you need to take home to examine in the morning. A net, of course, and for someone that's as old as I am, a nice soft cushion to kneel on, and that's about it. Sounds like the rooks and the crows are having something of an argument above me and behind as they come into roost, but there's quite a number of moths flying around. There's a few beetles, water beetles, landed on the car, and water boatmen, so maybe we could be in for one of those good nights. Now here's a new moth to this channel, and this is a twin spotted wainscot, maybe the first of a number of different wainscots that should drop in this evening. It's not a moth that I've personally trapped regularly, or even when Dillis was alive, and it's one of those moths, like many wetland species, can turn up at odd places, so there's always a chance that you could get this moth in your suburban or even urban garden. The fact that it's turned up here, it's one of the first moths in, isn't really much of a surprise, and this one's just showing a little bit of wear on the wings, but it's quite distinctive in terms of wainscots, with those generally two white spots on the forewings. There's one main one, then there's one very small which you just might be able to make out. So that's twin spotted wainscot, and that's a decent moth for Nottinghamshire. Well, here's a nice thing, and this is a moth that I've never trapped before. I've found the larva once a couple of years ago, but Dillis and I certainly never trapped this moth, and this is my first time ever. And it's a pale egger, just come in, and typical of a male egger of any kind. Just look at the antenna. It's extremely fresh, this moth, and even though it's just 2 shades of grey, it is an absolute beauty. Really pleased with this. This is one of the unexpected species. I've not gone through the books and looked to see what's flying, so anything that turns up really that's unexpected is very much a surprise, and indeed this pale egger is. And although it's probably fairly widespread in Nottinghamshire, it doesn't appear to be encountered very often, and in that case this is a very welcome record. So that's pale egger. It's a beauty, isn't it? $50 gone. It's just coming up to 10 to 10 in old money. Quite a different sort of turnover. There's some new species coming in. And so I've had 2 pale eggers now. It's funny, just like buses, the old saying, you wait an hour for one to come, and all of a sudden 2 come at once. And it's like that with moths, and in many instances you can wait years for a species, and then 2 come within minutes. How often that happens over the years is unbelievable. That at the stroke of a certain hour, all of a sudden moths of a certain species will come in, and quite often it'll be 2 or 3 of the same species within a minute sometimes. And so there's been several new ones of the year. In terms of micros, the first side ear Splendana, and I'll put a photo in here because it is an absolutely terrifically marked and beautiful micro moth. It's a lovely Tortrix. What else have we got? There's a few large yellow underwings coming in. That could be quite ominous, and we could be smashed to pieces, all of us. That includes all the moths and me, by large yellow underwings if numbers increase. But say twin spotted wainscot, there is another 1 or possibly 2 of those that's come in. And in terms of another micro, Montfort Ocraciella is new for the year here, and that's about it. There may well be another one tucked away in amongst the scrawl, which is my writing. 2 poplar hawks in there, and that's probably the only hawk moth I'm going to get in unless something ridiculous turns up. And there's a black archers, one of our favourites here. So plenty to keep me busy. We're on to what, 35, 36 species, 37 now, because there's an interesting looking crambid that's just come in, so I need to check that. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised at the number of moths that are coming in. We're well on the way towards 50 species. Good numbers of sallow kittens. It's the most sallow kittens that I've ever had, and I've only been going so far. May well get into double figures, but there is lots of sallow here, of course. Lots of flies on that back sheet. For the micros, the commonest moths are Acrobasis advenella, which is an absolute beauty of a moth. Now I'll put a photo in because I don't think that I've showed you that photo. And that's a moth that will turn up in most suburban gardens at some time. And what else have we got? Still good numbers of Agapita zoegana, which is again another absolute belter. Bright yellow with various sort of pinkish reddish markings. Cracking moth, and it's the most I've ever had here. But around this entrance to Misson Carr there are a lot of knapweed, and knapweed is the preferred food plant of the larva, so maybe not unexpected, but previously it's always been a moth rarely attracted to light. Might have had it once at Lound Wood, and the other sightings Dillis and myself had, I think they came both during the daytime. So, time to have another look what's on the sheet. Well, it's getting increasingly busy. It's taken me by surprise. This has, really has. And it's surprising how new species sneak in and settle down and you don't even see them. It's not until you have a bit of a wander around or casually glance and you think, oh, I didn't see that drop in. Two instances are pale prominent and iron prominent. Some moths just come in, thud down and close the wings, and that's it. But then other individuals and other species will fly around quite a lot. That's one lovely. And again, it's looking for those things that just that little bit different. But there's a good variety, very good variety. There's now a number of black arches in fact there's a second iron prominent that's just come in. But yeah, black arches, good numbers still coming in of that sallow kitten. You can't turn your back for a minute. And a common wainscot just come in, so I've got 3 moths to write down once I've done filming this. It's so easy to forget what you've seen, so. But this is a good night. The last time I came on the 4th of August, I ended up with 102 species, and that was quite phenomenal. I never dreamt on that night that I'd get 102. I don't think it's possible to get 100 species tonight, but we may well get into the 90s. I'd best write these down before I forget through my old age. As you can see, plenty of moths on the sheet. Not great in terms of variety. We've just gone to 64 species. Just check what the time is. Well, the time's just a few minutes off 11 o'clock, so we're just coming up to 2 hours. 2 hours, 64 species. I'm quite happy with that. Nothing really rare or interesting has come in yet. I got very excited about that pale egger, but I think we're now on to about 7. So it's rather took the edge off catching that first one. So we'll see what else comes in over the next hour or so. I'm just having 10 minutes away from the light and the sheet, just leant up against the car. My only mistake is that I've not poured out a cup of tea, but I'll rectify that shortly. But I like to take myself away from the light. It gives you a bit of a break, sort of mentally and physically as well, and allows you to enjoy the experience. We've not got many more weeks of good numbers of moths. It all goes by so quickly, the year, but it's nice to just watch the activity around the light and moths coming in, looking for that different shape that's illuminated from underneath as it drops tantalisingly towards the light. That's why when I do leave the light, I always take the trusty net. The moths are dropping in. But I was reminded in an email this last week from somebody who hasn't caught many carpet moths, which is a generalised term for moths belonging to the Geometridae lot. And quite right. On reflection, I've not had that many examples of carpets. Green carpet, which is a moth normally get in abundance, usually well into double figure counts, especially at Sherwood Forest, but not had many. Not had many brimstones. Brimstones is another very common moth. If you've had good numbers, let me know. But on the whole, no. It's a poor year for Geometridae moths. But there are low numbers, and it has been a poor year for most species, to be quite honest. A few have done really well. But it just goes to show you, the more you trap, the more you learn, or you should learn and pick up trends. You should notice trends. Don't just trap for trapping's sake and then sending your records off to the county recorder. I know a lot of people like to do that, but I like to look for trends in moth numbers. Incredibly interesting. Not everything's as doom and gloom ridden as the conservation organisations will lead us to believe. Some species do indeed do very well, but all moths have suffered from the wet July that we've just experienced, certainly here in Nottinghamshire and throughout the whole of the UK really. And I know I keep going back to it, but the dryness of 2022. Hot sunny weather can be very nice for insects. It does lead to a lot of insect activity. But when the food plant of the caterpillar starts wilting and dies, then it's not good for insects. Well, here's a moth that I have showed you before, but it's rare that I get the chance to actually show it. And it's a male drinker moth. Normally these just batter around the light, they come in and out of the light, fly away, and then head into vegetation, and then they come back again a couple of minutes later, and they can do that nearly all night long. But this one has settled down quite nicely. This is only the second one that's been in tonight. Once again, absolutely fantastically feathered antenna, just as a number of moths, and especially if you remember the antenna on those pale eggers, which appear to have stopped coming in now. But so that's drinker moth, very common, widespread. Quite often the large caterpillar will be found during the spring, often sunning itself on pathways, and they get the name from obtaining moisture from drops of dew on the grass blades. But it's a lovely moth, very rare, unless you collect a couple of caterpillars and hopefully get a female by rearing them through. It's rare that you'll see the female, but you'll see these smashing into everything. So that's drinker moth, and it'll turn up in suburban gardens, although it's usually and more frequently found in grassy habitats and woodlands, but it does occur elsewhere. We have a number of species on the back of the sheet here. Hopefully they may well remain, but they're pretty much what you've seen. But pale egger there, spectacle just there, that's the drinker moth that we've just seen. Beautiful black arches there. That's a flame shoulder, another moth that never really settles down a great deal, but a couple have done. There's another pale egger lower left, and that's just flopped. Next to the black arches, very briefly, was a small phoenix. Just gives you a bit of an idea of the activity around a moth trap. Ever changing, that's why you have to keep checking over the same area each time, because moths can settle and 30 seconds later they're off again. unfortunately, you probably can't see the majority of the moths that are on this sheet, but there should be more moths up here. Even in August, there are moths that are missing. They're missing in numbers as well. The most prominent omissions are the crambids. This sheet should be full of species like Agricola tristella, which you would get in big numbers this time of year. I've had one tristella and it's sat at the back of the light, and in terms of the numbers of crambids that are on the sheet, there's probably no more than 5, and that's unbelievable. I never thought that I would see that. But there are other species missing as well. It's very poor really for micros tonight, and I thought I would do well. I thought there'd be 1 or 2 nice species of Eclaris appearing on the sheet, but not one. Hardly had any Tortrix moths at all. And there's another moth that you would normally get in vast numbers. Certainly Dillis and I used to get them in large numbers in the Sherwood Forest area, but normally wherever you trap, and that's Blastobasis adostella. That's another moth that occurs abundantly. It's nothing much to look at, and I suppose in a way the Agricolas aren't spectacular by any means. But I do miss them, and it's all a result of this year and last year's weather again. The crambids, the Agricolas, and also crambus species, the Labra grass feeders, so they didn't have a deal to feed on last year, you see, and that's the problem for this year. It's going to take a couple of years for numbers to build up, so let's just hope that we don't have any more real lengthy extremes in the weather, and hopefully this time next year, or in 2 years' time, this sheet may be full. Well, we have our rare moth, and this, in terms of county records, really is a very rare moth indeed, and it's a birch mocha. I'm presuming that's the correct pronunciation. And Misson Carr is one of the 3 places that it's been recorded in the county. Last recorded here in 2005, and then it was trapped at the Idle Valley Nature Reserve in 2014, and has also turned up quite close by at Misterton. This is a species that at the start of trapping here earlier in the year I was hoping may well turn up, and isn't it an absolute beauty? So this one needs to go home to be photographed. Well, yet again Misson Carr has provided a sheet full of moths now, despite those missing moths and missing species that I mentioned earlier. It is, for me, it's a real treat to come here and to trap somewhere that I wanted to come and trap for years, and we've topped 90 species. In all probability, if I stay long enough, I can hit 100, I think, fairly easily, to be honest. But it's just a great spectacle of moths, and lots of moths are still coming in. This is what you wait for all winter. This is what you long for, the opportunity to do all winter long, to get numbers of moths like this, and a few county rarities to boot. So I think it's cup of tea time before we continue on the last leg of this particular trapping session. It's just a fabulous sight if you're a moth trapper. And if ever you get down during the winter months, re-watch this video. It soon comes round, soon finishes. But a great array of moths. So we are over 90 species now, and there's still some more to come in, I think. But it's been very disappointing though for micros. Very, very disappointing, but it could be different again next time. Now here's a beautiful moth, and not a moth that I've ever trapped in numbers, certainly at any one time, but this is blood vein, quite appropriately named. You can see why. Generally that dull straw colour to both forewings and hind wings, and then there's that darker red narrow winding band or line that goes across both forewings and hind wings, and then the trailing edge of the forewings and all around the hind wings are bordered very thinly in a pinky red colour, making this a very attractive moth. Great antenna, typical of many moths, where the antennae are pectinate and very feathered. So that's blood vein. That's not long since come in. So not a moth see very often, always nice to see. I'm being bombarded, but there again I'm daft enough to sit against the light, but the time has come to think about packing up. It's well gone 1 o'clock in the morning. I've been here 4 hours, and many of you will know my golden rule, and that's to pack up and leave the moths plenty of time to sort themselves out, have a feed, and find somewhere to spend the day, somewhere safe. I can't complain at the numbers of moths that I've had tonight, and moths are still coming in. But there has to be a limit, and I find it's nice to pack up while it's like this. Trouble is, you usually regret it in the cold light of tomorrow morning and think, I wish I'd stayed longer. But what a great trapping session it's been. Once again, this site has inundated us with moths, as you can see. Well, while I go and wander over the gate and switch the generator off, I'll leave you looking at this lot. I've moved the light out of the way, and the box itself has got many, many moths on it. But what a sight that is. That is, if your hobby is moth trapping,